Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Today I'm going to make a self-centering mortising jig for my router, and I've already got a bit of a start, so let's have a look. The first thing I've done is take the 3 bolts out of the top of my existing router base because I want to use this as a template. And what I have here is a blank piece of plastic. It's 1/4 of an inch thick, a little bit thicker than this, but it'll work perfect for what we want to do here today. Now what I need to do, if you look at the bolts that I just took off, you'll see that they're actually countersunk, and I need to replicate that on here. Now what I need to do, first of all, I'm going to mark these 3 holes that I need to drill, and then I'm going to use this very fine drill bit and drill a fine hole right through. And the reason I want to do that is after I do that, I'm going to use this Forstner bit, and I've already marked it, or checked it, it's the same size as the holes that are there now, so I'm going to use this to drill a countersink hole, and after I drill the countersink hole, then I can drill the through hole. So there's a bit of a process here. You can see off in the corner I've done a test cut here, and it was a little bit shallow, and rather than trying to readjust this to get it perfect, the quickest way is just to use a shim underneath that, so that's what I'm going to do to get the perfect hole depth. Now you can see because I used the Forstner bit last, there's already a little bit of a starting point in there. So I've changed bits and now I can do the through holes. Okay, well, we don't need that plastic covering on there anymore. So let's try this first of all before we go any further and make sure that that fits. Now the next thing I need to do, if you look carefully, you'll see that I've got a very small, it's actually a 1/16 router bit in there, and what I need to do now is find the center of my new plate, and I've plugged in the router, so I'm just going to turn it upside down and just drive that pin through that plate so that I know where the center is. Now that I have the base on and I know exactly where the center is, what I need to do is to mark how I want this to work for me. And for me, when I'm holding a router, I want the plunge lock to be where my left hand is. That's what I'm comfortable doing. So I want the router to go onto the piece of wood that I'm going to be routing, go down like that, I'll plunge and allow the lock to go like that, then I can do my cut. So what that tells me is I want a pin here and back here, and now I just need to flip this over and mark that. Now you can see where I've clamped the ruler on there, and the center of the ruler is running right through the center of the hole, and all I want to do now is that I'm just going to etch a line along there. There we go. Now I just need to mark 2 equal points here and drill a hole. Now the best way of finding the 2 parts is not to try and measure it, but to get some sort of a measuring block. Now you can see that I've got the bit sticking through, and now remember it's unplugged now, and I just want to set it so that I've got the thickest part on each side here. And the easiest and most accurate way of measuring this, now that we've got the other line, is to scribe that over there, and I'm actually going to spin it around because it's easier for me to do it this way. And do the same thing on this side. Just want to check that, make sure that's, yep. Okay, now I just need to go to the drill press and drill a couple of holes there, and I'll just do that off camera. Okay, I've skipped along a little bit, but I'll show you exactly what I've done. So there's the base, and that's sort of the bottom of what we've been looking at. But what I did was flip it over. So this is the router would be sitting on top of here now. And what I've done, I've drilled here and here. You can see a couple of countersink holes, and there's a couple of screws that I have, whoops, that will fit in those. There's one there, and there's another one. Now the other thing that I've done off camera is I have cut a couple of dowels, and I've drilled some holes in the center of them. And what I'm going to do now is attach these. Now this one is off a tiny bit, but that's actually good because that I was going to show you how to adjust for that anyway. So I decided to just leave that with a tiny bit off center. Now what I'm doing is I'm obviously attaching these two pins to the bottom of our base, and when I've done that, then I can reattach it to the bottom of the router, and we're ready to start doing our first cut with this. Okay, and that's what that looks like. Okay, let's test this little jig. What I've done, I've got my 3/8 spiral bit, up spiral bit in there, and I've made a couple of marks. You can see the marks there. So I'm going to do one plunge cut there and one on the end, and then I'll cut out a little bit in the middle, and then we'll just cut out the material in between. All right, so let's get started here. Take some of our material. Now I've got two pieces of tenoning material. I usually have two on hand. One is often a little bit thicker than the other, just a tiny bit. I'm not sure which one will, well, that one fits in there perfect, so that's good. And all this tenon material is, in my case, I like to use 1.5 inch. So I just cut a 1.5 inch piece of wood that's 3/8 of an inch thick, and sometimes I need to sand it to get it the perfect thickness. And for the edges, I just round the edges over with on my router table with a round over bit, and it makes perfect tenoning material. And you can see that it's nice and snug in there. That's perfect. Now, what I also wanted to show you was when you look at this mortise cut in here, it actually looks just about perfect. So that's exactly what we want, but sometimes you want it off-centered. And the way we do that is you can clamp, for example, and put a clamp on here, and put a clamp on the side, and I'm just using this just to show you as an example. So if this was off center, or maybe you want your mortise cut one side or the other, and the way you do that is just simply by adding some material, whatever thickness that you want, where you want it to slide over. And in this case, it looks like it's moved over, about 1/8 of an inch, so not very much. And it depends on how far over you want it one way or the other, or maybe it's not exactly in the center, and that's what you can do to just sort of adjust it, is just by adding material to one side or the other, and then you can adjust where that slot is exactly. So it's a great, quick, easy little jig, and you can do an awful lot with that. I just wanted to take a minute and have a look at that and see, and it's 3/8 on the left side, and 3/8 on the right hand side. So that's a pretty accurate setup for that little jig. Well, and there's a look at our self-centering mortising jig or slot cutting jig, whatever you want to do with it. And what I used for making floating tenons for years and years. I don't use this process much anymore, but it works well and makes good, strong joints, easy to connect and easy to cut. So might be something you want to look at for your shop as well. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.